Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are unpacking something absolutely fascinating. So what if I told you that an intense cultural ritual, specifically exorcism as it's practiced in parts of India, is actually hiding a highly structured, incredibly brilliant psychological framework right beneath the surface? I know, it sounds wild. To an outside observer, these rituals might just look like dramatic, supernatural chaos. But if we actually take a closer look, we find a deeply embedded cultural practice that serves as a profound mechanism for real healing. To do this, we're grounding today's explainer in a really incredible systematic review recently published in the African Journal of Biomedical Research. These researchers took a rigorous clinical, anthropological, and psychosocial look at the Mehandapur Balaji Temple. It's one of India's most prominent ritual healing sites. And having this peer-reviewed research gives us an incredibly rich, evidence-informed lens to decode what is literally happening in the minds of the people during these practices.
So, here's the big question that kicks this all off. Why do millions of people actively seek out healing and exorcism? It's such a compelling paradox, isn't it? I mean, medical facilities are expanding globally, so why do so many individuals dealing with severe psychological and behavioral distress choose to go to a temple over a traditional psychiatric clinic? Well, the answer is that what looks like pure supernatural chaos is, in reality, a highly sophisticated psychological intervention, and it's one that is tailored perfectly to the cultural worldview of the patient.
Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to unpack this complex mechanism layer by layer. First, we'll look at the temple's healing logic. Then, we'll explore reframing diffuse distress, removing blame and stigma, restoring predictability and control, the role of shared cognition and validation, and finally, integrating faith and medicine.
Section 1. The Temple's Healing Logic. Just to set the stage quickly, the Mehandapur Balaji Temple in Rajasthan has this dramatically charged atmosphere designed specifically to battle perceived black magic. It's governed by a supreme triad of deities, Balaji, Pretraj, and Bhairav, who symbolically hold absolute authority over malevolent spirits.
And that brings us to the absolute core thesis of our explainer today. We call it meaning reattribution. This is the primary therapeutic mechanism happening at the temple. It's a cognitive and spiritual process that fundamentally transforms how a person perceives their own psychological or physical suffering. Think of it like a symbolic framework. It takes this confusing, overwhelming internal pain and translates it into a culturally intelligible, understandable problem.
Let's move to our first layer, reframing diffuse distress. How exactly does this ritual alter the patient's internal narrative? Think about how terrifying a mental health crisis is. The distress is vague, it's confusing, and it feels completely out of your hands. Typically, a person might view their turmoil as a moral failure, a personal weakness, or they might just think, "My mind is broken." That creates this heavy existential uncertainty. But the ritual system steps in and brilliantly reframes this distress. It shifts the narrative from an internal failure to an external affliction, specifically spiritual meddling or a possessing entity. By giving it a specific supernatural cause, the system replaces that terrifying uncertainty with a crystal-clear explanation that fits perfectly within the devotee's worldview. Next up, Layer 2, removing blame and stigma. What's really interesting here is how this tackles the massive societal consequences of mental health struggles. The research highlights something pretty heartbreaking. In many communities, people are terrified of being labeled mad. They risk severe social rejection and familial shame. A clinical mental health diagnosis can unfortunately carry a devastating stigma. But by framing the issue as a spiritual battle instead of a psychiatric one, the temple provides a socially sanctioned platform for catharsis. The patient isn't rejected by their community, they are embraced and supported as a victim of supernatural forces. It's a total game changer.
And because a possessing entity is at fault, the individual is completely absolved of personal blame. Think about it. If someone is screaming, thrashing around, or having a dissociative episode in the temple, society doesn't hold them responsible. It's the spirit acting out, not the person. This external locus of control allows the individual to express all this intense, pent-up trauma without ruining their social standing.
Moving on to Layer 3, restoring predictability and control. When you feel like your distress is random or just an internal failure, it strips away all your agency, right?
The temple takes that uncontrollable chaos and gives it a highly structured pathway for resolution. Once the spirit is identified, there's a known cure through a codified sequence of rituals. It starts with Step 1, the Dur Kasta, which is an initial offering of ladus. Then step 2, the arzi, a formal petition using dal and rice. And finally, step 3, mukti, which is the forced spiritual discharge where the priest might verbally negotiate with the spirit or even create a symbolic boundary to contain it. This therapeutic logic is incredible because it tells the devotee, if you follow these rules, we can remove the entity. It gives the family a profound sense of agency and hope.
Let's see how this builds in layer 4, shared cognition and validation. The community plays a massive role here. None of this works in a vacuum. The effectiveness of this whole reattribution process is massively reinforced because it's a shared belief system. The priests, the family, the entire crowd, they all accept the narrative of spirit possession. This collective validation creates a deeply potent placebo effect that actually modulates how the person perceives their own symptoms. And there's a really crucial gender dynamic to note here too. For vulnerable groups, especially women constrained by restrictive social roles, this provides a safe idiom of distress. It offers them a socially acceptable way to express severe psychosocial trauma that might otherwise be completely silenced.
Finally, our last section, integrating faith and medicine. How do we bridge the gap between these traditions and modern practice?
Well, we have to look at two different perspectives. You have the emic perspective, the insider view, where healing makes sense culturally. And then you have the etic perspective, the outsider, universal biomedical view. There's a tension here. If Western biomedicine just pathologizes these beliefs, they alienate the patient and miss out on that powerful therapeutic ritual we just talked about. But on the flip side, relying only on faith healing has serious risks, like delaying crucial psychiatric treatment. So the systematic review strongly advocates for a collaborative care model, one that absolutely respects the patient's worldview, but still keeps biomedical safeguards in place. So here is what I want you to walk away with today. How can modern biomedicine learn from these cultural frameworks to treat the whole patient? Meaning, reattribution proves that providing a coherent narrative and removing social stigma are just as absolutely crucial to a patient's healing as any medication. By finding that intersection between stories, faith, and clinical care, we can honor a person's beliefs while truly protecting their health. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I really hope it gave you a completely new perspective on the profound psychology behind these rituals.